Hello and welcome back to the Elevated Entrepreneur. Yes, I remembered the podcast name, Connor. Let's go. All right, so today my guest is a good friend of mine. His name is Jesse Hopkins. I call him the skill finder, the talent finder. I don't know which one we're gonna go with it yet, but I met Jesse, again a year, a little bit more than that now. And one of the most brilliant things that he helped me discover is the same thing I want him to teach us, which is basically how do you stay into your zone of genius? How do you build a team that stays in there so you can grow a little bit faster? Please welcome our good buddy, Jesse. Jesse, what's up, brother? All the way from his car.
All the way from my car in a Casey's parking lot in Omaha, Nebraska. Such a strange place to do a podcast from, but I'm here. I was running kind of a little bit late today. I'm not gonna lie to you, and I was a little worried about being on time, so I was like, "Screw it, I'm just gonna jump in my car and go instead of
Yeah,
trying to land
no,
somewhere."
no, it works out.
Yeah.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you about was over the weekend we had our elevated workshop and you did a presentation about finding skills, and right out the gate when we first started working together, you had me take the Gallup assessment. And I think inherently I'm relatively fortunate is that I'm probably overly self-overwhelmed. Some would say not self-overwhelmed, self-aware. Some would say self-absorbed, depending on who you ask. I use like self-aware is fine. But one of those like that assessment was so helpful because it kind of gave weight to what I already kind of knew, if that makes sense. Like I knew that I was very much a visionary. I knew that I don't do well with execution. And so, but what it did though was it did allow me to find the right who to cover some of my faults. And so maybe can we start with this of the misconception of the need to work on one's weaknesses versus leaning into your strengths? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is super interesting because if you think about talent, like let's say you were playing a sport, right? And you're not tall enough. And somebody was telling you, well, you just need to be taller. Like, what are you going to do? Waste all of your life trying to grow an extra 5 inches? You
Hmm.
know what I mean? You're never going to be tall enough. If you're not tall enough, you need to work on other things. So think about, and again, we'll use a sports analogy on it. We'll use quarterbacks since everybody talks football. Russell Wilson isn't supposed to be well this year. He sucks. So, but let's take. I'm
He's
a
still in the
Broncos
NFL
fan.
though.
Hey, listen, he still competes at a high level. He's not, I mean, he's good, but when he came in, he actually fell in the draft. I don't remember where he was drafted. I think second round or something like that. And he wasn't supposed to be very good because he was too short. He's
Hmm.
5'11". But what people didn't realize, because they had this kind of skill set identified for quarterbacks, you're tall, good arm strength, blah, blah, blah. But what he didn't have in height, he made up for in just his competitiveness. So he found his strengths, what he was really good at, and he just leveraged that to be good in the position, right? So, when you process working on the strengths versus working on your weaknesses, there are some things you're just never going to be good at, and you're wasting all of your time. How much more of a return on investment will you get if you actually make yourself better at the talent that you have,
Yeah.
right?
But by the way, I meant to ask you this weekend. So like I like to say, and I said this over the weekend too in the workshop, but I feel like every great offer or service that's provided, when it comes to the founder, it's usually their pain, and then they find other people like them that also have that pain, right? And so when we're talking about being, it's almost like some people may be overlooked because people look at their weaknesses. Again, take the example we gave of the quarterback, right? Like people look at 5'11", they go, he can't be good at this, but then he's outstanding because he leverages his strengths, which then made me think about like, have you seen the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt?
Yes, love it.
Okay, so
Love it.
there's this underlying tone, and they never really fully address it. You see him get mad about it when someone calls him out on it. But the whole reason, not the whole reason, but part of the reason why he loved that new system, the basically the way that they were finding talent, unlike anybody else, was because he was overlooked. Like so, when he was getting recruited, I don't know if you caught that, but I just recently watched it. That's why. But
Yeah.
there's a point where he's talking to a recruiter. There's a point to this, by the way. But he's talking to the recruiter, and the recruiter's like, "Oh, I get it. Like this is about you. Like you think that we made a mistake because he was taken too late in the draft or whatever. And so for you, out of curiosity, like was there ever a time that you felt like you were overlooked, and then you leaned into and found maybe this kind of process of discovering talent where people maybe saw it as like overlooked?"
That's a great question, Raylan. Making me think deep today. Yeah, I would say that I felt overlooked a lot, especially in the world of like business, right?
Hmm.
Because my brain works a little bit different than most people. When I discovered the Strengths Finder, it was like a ha moment for me of yes, that's exactly it. Um, and just a little bit of a segue, not a segue, but a side note to this too, is like even the way I think about compensation is different than most people. Most people think of compensation in a way of like, well, you get paid hourly, right? Or salary. You're trading your time for money. And I think, no, you should get paid for your production. I don't care
Yeah.
about your time. I care about what you produce. So my brain just works a little bit outside of the traditional sense. And I feel like I've been able to leverage that well within most of the places I've worked, right? So little, again, compensation works really well in that because I think outside of the box, I've actually made people more money
Yeah.
because they're getting a better return on their investment. Um, and then even working with individuals outside of that, again, what I've done again is I think differently, and I'm not afraid to embrace that difference. Whereas most people will say go right, I'm going to tell you to go left.
Yeah.
You know, And so, yeah, I would say that's been it. And it was, yes, I was able to leverage my personality in a field where most people are like, you need to be really good at school and do well with your schoolwork. I can do it, but I study differently. My wife is a traditional type of person. So when she studies, Raylan, she like one thing going. When I'm studying, because I'm ADHD. I have music going, I have the TV going, I have my book open, I have my phone open, I'm posting videos while I'm studying, and that's the only way I can absorb information,
Mm-mm.
right? Because my brain's going in too many miles. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but I would definitely say the pain of being overlooked and being told that I will not be successful, even from a societal standpoint, the background of my family, um, statistically, I wasn't supposed to make it, right? I always thought I would be dead by the age of 30. And so um, that, when I look at it and understand that oftentimes the best talent comes in an unrefined box. And that's my driver. And that's how I felt like a lot of my life was as an underdog.
Well, that's why I also love what you do so much, and just for the context of people that are listening, that you really have two different kind of people that you help, right? It's individuals that are kind of find the best way that they can leverage their skill to make more money, be happy, etc. And then obviously you do work with corporations and kind of in the people business. I won't say HR because it's a little bit more than that, but in the people business. And so, but what's super fascinating about again what you do and why I love it so much is because I think about how many people that don't feel like they can make it because of what they have. Like I even think about I did pretty well in school. I did really well in school, but it wasn't because I was smart. It was because I kissed ass. Like I always jokingly talk about how like the only difference between like so in seventh grade I could spell Eddie with my report card. Eighth grade came around and I had straight A's up until my senior year, and then I had one B, and that was just because I was getting lazy. But the what was the difference? It was that I just started to kind of negotiate. I realized my talent, which you helped me realize too, was influence. So if I got a B on a test, I would go to the teacher and go, "Look, what do I have to do to make this an A? I'll do extra work. I'll retake the test. I'll write an essay. What do I need to do to make this an A? Because I will have straight A's." And then it became this negotiation thing that I always would do. And of course, I sat in the front of the room. I'm kissing the teacher's ass left and right. I mean, I'm working it, right? But that I wasn't because I was
Yes.
smart, but it was because I was leveraging a talent that I didn't know I had, which was my voice, was like influence. And again, I think back to like, okay, so think about like the entrepreneurs that are listening to this.
Yeah.
Like when I first started out, I was trying to do things that I just wasn't naturally. Let me put it this way: that I just didn't enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important to do at first. Like, it's not to say that you can't do those things. It just took me fucking forever. So a perfect example of this I always talk about is like if you ask me to write a landing page, it's going to take me personally, it's going to take me like 3 months to do it. But if
Yeah.
you ask me to like, so now how we operate with the team is that I have it in my head. And so if we're working with a client that needs a landing page, Elisa will call me and I'll just tell her what I think should be on it. And I can word it, I could like verbalize it, and then it gets on, it gets on the page. And so, but that comes from, again, doing this kind of work where you go, okay, where can I best leverage my time, make the most, and then who can fill those slots for me if you're growing a business.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was talking to, so again, this is the crazy thing to me is you can have some incredibly successful entrepreneurs and they still don't understand what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. I mean, they do it really well, but they can't really explain it. So I'll use, again, this radiator company I worked for. I think it's okay for me to use them.
Well, Jesse, by the way,
What?
you are so right, because it wasn't until recently I knew, kind of because of you helped me figure out what I'm good at. And then this weekend, actually, one of our people that were there, Alea, helped me put more words to it, which
Yeah.
is like my zone of genius was seeing I thought I was good at offer building. I don't know if I told you this yet. So I
No.
thought my genius was offer building, but it's seeing a 5-year vision for a company. And I
Yes.
thought I was building offers, but I'm building entire like generational offers that like stack up.
Hmm.
I can see the whole thing. And then my other talent was being able to verbalize it to you. So I didn't realize I had a sense of it, but it wasn't until you and Alea that I realized, oh wait, like I'm not selling offers, I'm selling visions. Like
Yep.
here's what I think, here's what I see, and this is like I think it would have been fun to have Alea too on this thing, because I was talking to Kayla about this. I'm sorry I cut you off. We'll come back to it, but I was
Yeah.
talking to Kayla about this, and we were talking about what I actually do, and I was thinking about Alea because for me, I literally, there's a reason I close my eyes, and it's something that Alea said. She goes, "You close your eyes because you literally can see. It's almost like you can see the future,
Yes.
and so you're
Yeah.
closing your eyes so you can actually see it, and then you're describing to people. And this is where voice comes in. I'm describing to people what I see, and that's
Mm.
actually what I'm selling." Which I didn't
Yes.
realize that's what I was doing, because I always thought it was weird that I'm like, when I'm talking to you, and you know that I do this, but I literally
Yeah.
close my eyes and I'm like, I start to, because I can literally see it,
Yeah.
and then I just have to describe to you what I see. But it's like the weirdest. And then Alea is pretty woo, so like of course like she's like, no, you're going into other dimensions when you do that. I'm like, I don't know. It's a little too far
uh,
for me.
well, but I think there's some, regardless of how you explain it, I do understand what she's saying, right? Like you have entered into a space, because the other thing for you is that you are very strategic. And I don't think that people always understand how deep of a thinker you are, because they see the first thing that you see when you see Raylan is that influencer come out, right? You're
Yeah, but what do you mean by strategic? This is where I kind of get confused, because I don't view myself as oh, maybe that's the execution. So I'm
yeah,
strategic because I can think strategically, but execution wise, I'm like a zero. So
well, and that's not true either, because I know you can execute, but it's like it drains you. You have
mhm.
to work really hard at execution because it's not your natural state of being, right?
Ah,
And so when you surround yourself with people who naturally lean into execution, so I'll use this as an illustration, on a personal level, like the one-to-one level. When I wake up in the morning, I am a very like I use influence and strategic thinking. You and I are very, very similar that way.
hmm. I know when
My
I saw the
wife,
report, I was like, we're twins.
yeah, we really are in some ways, very much talent twins. My wife, all execution and relationship. Well, no, she's a very high thinker, but very high execution. So this is what it looks like in the morning, because you use your talents, just you don't even realize you use talents, right? Like if you ask somebody, like for you, Raylan, like when you talk about communication, don't you just feel like everybody should be good at it?
Yeah.
It's just natural to you. So it's like, what? You're not, so you don't even recognize your own talents sometimes because it's just a natural state of being.
Or when Kayla's like, you're working a lot, and I'm like, all I did was talk all day.
Yes, right? Yes, and you don't even understand, or like you've built 10 offers and you feel like, like I didn't do much today. I don't know what you're talking about, right? But
Yeah.
that's because that's where you live, that's where you exist. So when I wake up in the morning, I like to just sit still and let my brain go, right? I'm thinking. There's a lot of deep thinking that happens. I don't know what I'm thinking about, but I'm thinking. My wife, she wakes up in the morning and she is go mode. She's cleaning the house. She's getting prepared. She's, looking at the calendar. She's doing I mean, she goes because her natural state of being is more in the execution state, and mine is more in the thinking state. And so your talent dictates how you show up, not just in your business, but in life. And the clearer you can get on what you're really good at, the better you can be at what you do. And the moment that we can accept that I don't have to be good at everything, the sooner you can be more effective at everything you do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, one of the things you mentioned earlier, I want to come back to, you're talking about like even the high level entrepreneurs, and you were going to give an example about a company you were working with.
Yes. Doesn't even know. So the company I was working with, we grew from 3 locations doing like 8 million a year to 30 locations doing 70 million a year. And we kind of scaled. And we had different stages of evolution. What is it that the business does? So, I tell you, hey, we sell radiators. Yes, that's part of what we did, but that's not what we did. That's not what made us great at what we did. What made us great is that the owner of the company knew how to structure deals for purchasing. He is one of the best buyers I've ever met in my life, and he was very, very intelligent. And so what we became, because we were so big, there was 2 things that we did. We became an importer because we were buying the product from overseas. We imported the goods and we distributed the goods. That's what made us genius. The people that were selling the parts for us was really the franchise that we leveraged to do it. So the sooner we can understand what we actually do, the sooner we can understand how to leverage what we do in a more efficient fashion. So again, we look at this, and one of my strategies, and we never really executed it for this company. So if somebody wants to steal this, go for it. I think it would be difficult. But what I was telling them was, why are we paying, when we look at vertical integrations, right? Why are we paying other companies to bring those radiators? We were spending, I don't know what we were spending. So again, you're going to kind of hear a random number. Yeah, it was like $3 million a year to bring in product and transport it. Why not, if you're spending $3 million, why not go and purchase your own trucks and be your own distributor? Oh, and by the way, you're doing it for a whole network of people, which represents, we did 70 million. We were probably importing close to $250 million worth of product for the whole network. Why not start capping in on that profit margin? Does that make sense? Yeah. But you have to be honest about what you do. If you only sell radiators, you'll never actually see what you're really good at. Yeah. Another example is this, even in the functions of your business, right? I used to ask our inventory people, what do we sell? Right? And this is a great kind of illustration, I think. I would ask them what we sell, and what do you think they told me?
Radiators.
We sell radiators, right? Wrong. That is not what our warehouse sells. Our warehouse is selling boxes. Think about it. The first thing you get a pair of shoes, what is the first thing you see?
The box.
The box. If that box is messed up, how good are those shoes?
Probably going to be messed up. Yeah.
Well, not necessarily, but in your mind, they're messed up, right?
Yeah.
So now those shoes are actually worth less money because the boxes, who cares about the box? Well, the people buying the box. So when you can kind of shift your perspective a little bit and understand what you do, again, it brings a little bit more emphasis. So then after I'm teaching all of our warehouse guys this, guess what improved? The condition of the boxes, because they started taking pride in understanding their impact on what they did. So I think it's really important to be able to identify your talent, what you're good at, and the moment you can really begin to vocalize it, that is the moment, it's the aha moment where you can begin to operate in the genius and stop trying to be more than what you really need to be. Because as an entrepreneur, Raylan, the worst lie, or the most prolific lie that every entrepreneur has, well, not everyone, but most of them, is that you have to be good at everything.
Yeah. I always say that, and I picked this up back when I was in corporate and I was in sales, and I used to then, this will come as a shock to you maybe, Jesse, but I don't really like being put in a box.
Really?
So
that's surprising.
Yeah. And they used to get mad at me because I was learning about marketing. and they were like, no, you're a sales guy, like don't worry about marketing. Well, I just need to know how it all kind of blends together. And then I realized that like, no, my I don't want to learn marketing to do it. I need to know enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
So everything in my business I know about, but I can't, I'm not an expert in, but I think I should. And then the only reason why is so that way, if I look at it, I know something screwed up. Like, for example, like my team probably can't stand it, but I'll send them back something and go, I don't like this. I don't know why, but there's something missing here. And then they're experts, so they can find it, like, right. And maybe they'll say, like, can you give me more precise? Where about this? What about this do you like? And I can
Yeah.
figure it out. But one of the things with the skills, leveraging the skills reminds me of jiu-jitsu because there's a guy. Oh man, there's a camp. Oh, that's what it is. So John Danaher's Death Squad, they're called. They changed the name
Hmm.
to New Wave Jiu-Jitsu now. But anyway, so Gordon Ryan is the best jiu-jitsu practitioner to ever live. Like he's the goat.
Yeah.
And this whole squad is the same. And on paper, it looks like they're good at everything, but it's actually not what they do. What they're really, really good at is a handful of positions, mostly leg locks, and they're really good at getting you to that position.
Mm.
So they're not perfect everywhere. So the game becomes these are my moves that I'm good at. I'm going to get you to that position so I can win. So, for example, a lot of times I'm thinking about this when it comes to sales. So, like if you're someone that I hear this a lot, right? I don't like sales. Well, for example, instead of looking at it from perspective, okay, you're a seller, you're giving them a strategy and then asking if they want you to do it for them. So I always talk about how like
Mm.
my sales strategy is I'm going to tell you what I see for your company and where it could go if you do X, Y, and Z, and then it's up to you. I love doing that anyway. I do that in my sleep. And so I don't
Yeah.
feel like I'm selling. I'm just telling you what I see and then asking you at the end, like, do you want me to do it for you? Like, that's it. And
Yeah.
so by changing, again, the position, by bringing you to my zone of genius and the way that I think, I'm able to actually sell more this way because like I'm comfortable because it's like
Yeah.
it's my space. And so I think what you do again like is interesting to me because again it's like okay, well what about somebody who, and this also goes back to, maybe we can talk a little bit about this, the difference between entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. So I was just
Hmm.
talking to someone on my team, and we're doing like these really interesting deals where, and let's face it, the biggest thing that we love doing, specifically with the agency,
Hmm.
oh, there we go.
Sorry.
Specifically with the agency is we're all making money together. And it's way more fun. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
some of the things we're gonna be doing is flying out to clients, and it's like the
Yeah.
four of us, and that's fun. Okay, like you
Yeah.
don't have to make money on your own, but unfortunately, this is a tangent. But unfortunately, people get a little selfish, and they're like, oh, I can make more money, like if I just do it by myself, and it's like, no, like you have no idea. But
Yeah.
anyway, so she hits me up today and we're talking. She goes, Raylan, I don't know. I realized over the weekend, I don't know why I keep trying to push my thing because I can A, make way more money with everybody else and it'll be more fun. And so it's
Hmm.
interesting, I think, but it's again, this is the conversation of entrepreneurship versus entrepreneurship. And some people, right, like a perfect example when I say entrepreneurship, so I have people on my team that still have their own thing. And listen, I think it's really important, at least for my company anyway, a very different company. But for my company, I want you to have your own thing still.
Right.
Like, because I think it's important. I just think it's important.
Yeah.
I just want you to have that freedom. But, like, one of the key concepts to me is like, how much do you have to do that you don't want to do versus if you work together? Because I take care of the lead gen, I take care of the sales, and then like I take care of the the customer conversations, and then you get to just do what you love doing, and arguably you could probably make the same if not more. So why not do it,
Right.
right? So maybe talk to me a little bit about like your thoughts on entrepreneurship versus entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So first of all, man, entrepreneurship, that's a whole different level of understanding risk because entrepreneurship versus entrepreneurship, a lot of it has to do with your ability to accept risk, right?
Mm,
And most people think they're risk takers until they actually have to take the mortgage out for the business that they want. You know what I mean?
yes.
Or they have to suffer through a month where they're not making what they want to make, or they realize that all the effort, blah blah blah. So I think um, your talent does dictate certain things. So again, let's go to influential people. right? And you and I are both really strong in the influence realm.
Can you break
Influential,
down really quick, like, what do you mean by influence? Because again, like, some people think of
yeah,
influencing like loud, like people. So
yes,
maybe break that
yeah,
down a little bit too.
yeah. So, well, I'll give you the four main domains that we use, and I'll just tell you real quickly. My favorite thing about um, assessments, period, is they help you understand deeper parts of yourself. What I hate when it comes to assessments is that people have started using them to define who they are, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not who you are. It's not.
And excuses, huh?
Yes, it's an excuse. Like, well, I'm just this way, right?
No, I'm an
The reason,
introvert, or I'm a introvert, so I
yeah,
can't do this. Yeah,
right. Like, I'm just not good with people, and you're
yeah.
like, really, okay. And that's something I did want to talk about. Real, like, I want to come back to the execution piece,
I'm
but
writing notes for us because again, we jump around a lot. Me and you jump around a
yes,
lot, so I got it.
yes,
I got it.
okay, all right, I appreciate that. Um, but so when I started working with Gallup, the it's just the idea behind it. It is your talent. It's not who you are. They're tools that you have in your belt, and they just put words to it so that you can begin to communicate clearly, right? So let's go to like influential people. An influential, like an influencer, somebody who leans into influence to get a task done, is somebody who basically we like to impact the direction that somebody is moving, right? So really, it's like when I come in, there's a talent called woo. It's winning others over, right? And now people who like to win others over, first of all, it's a game, a little bit of a competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see how many people I can get to like me. They're really, really, they come across really friendly, very, very warm personality. I think you have a lot of woo in you. That's how you get away sometimes with calling people out real
Mm-hmm.
strongly, is that they love you. It's because you're very woo, very command. So an influencer, again, we like relationships, but we like kind of a lot. We want a lot of people to like us, right? It's all about the masses with an influencer. So in the domains, there's influence, relationship, execution, and strategic thinking are your four main domains that we have in Gallup. Um, Relational people, to give context to an influence, a relational person wants to go a mile deep.
Mm-hmm.
Influencers are a mile wide. Relationship people are usually a mile deep. So, somebody who was, we had a member of the academy, Anthony, and when you see Anthony, like he is fantastic. Now, I'm going to get to the execution. I'm going to use this as an example, actually. Anthony is incredibly influential with the way he shows up. He influences the way you think through storytelling. So when I say he's very relational, and on an influence, by the way, his influence was like, it was almost non-existent on the results for the domains.
Oh,
And so
real.
you look at it and you go, and communication was not in his top 10 either, which is also crazy because he's really good at communicating. But this is kind of to give depth to this. It's not about whether or not he's good at communicating. When you look at communicator, it's what he leans into first to get a task done. Anthony is very slow to speak
Yeah.
if you watch him. And
Kayla literally
he's
brought that up last night. She was like, it was kind of weird. Like, I'd say something and then he wouldn't say anything back. Like, he'd just stare at me. But he's
this
like,
really, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, but it's because he's waiting for you to talk more. Like
Yes.
he wants you to keep going. He wants to learn more. He wants to, you know.
Yes. And it's this relationship piece. Like he is really like, it's almost abnormal for me. Like I don't know a lot of people like Anthony. He really wants to know the true you. There isn't a sales angle at all with Anthony. It is
Mm-hmm.
genuine. This is who he is. And he would rather you speak and get to know you deeper than to speak himself. Influential people, we want everybody to know us. I don't need to know you. I need you to know me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the way it is. But here's the one thing you have to avoid on that. I actually deeply desire and value relationships and depth in my relationships. So I have to understand, like, just because that's not a skill set that I have, like, I'm not going to sit like Anthony does, look you deeply in the eye and make you feel like, we're about to have Christmas dinner. Not happening. Um, But I show up in relationships differently. Like, you know that I care about you when I'm making jokes, giving you a hard time, and I'm challenging thought processes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I've learned in my skill set, I used to show up really kind of abrasive. I would just come in and challenge you, and why don't you get what it was just very abrasive. And what I've learned over time, and this is the beauty of talent, I can turn it on and turn it off,
Yeah.
right? So as an influencer, I don't always have to influence. I can actually turn the volume down, on my influence, and show up in a very meaningful and deep way for people that makes them feel felt and heard. And this is, when we talk about talent, Raylan, talent doesn't mean you're good at something, right? In fact, if you're using your talent in the wrong situation, you're not going to be good at that situation.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not the right talent to use. So sometimes, like, it was funny that you're using Anthony. He actually probably needed to like respond to Kayla.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, he was turning his listening talent up so much that it actually became a little awkward and maybe uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So learning how to leverage talent in the proper situations is really key and really important. And it takes a long time. It's not like I can just say, hey, here's your talents and you'll go figure it all out. It's actually a lifetime of developing those talents to really leverage them as strengths.
So then what would you say is the difference between talent versus a skill?
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. I love that question, actually. Thank you for asking it, because it's I'm going to use that later. So a skill set, um, let's use execution. Administratively, you got really good grades, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know how to do your homework. To write things out, you're probably not bad at writing. I know you say I'm not a good writer, but you can write, can't you?
Yeah.
And you can get an A on that paper. So that's a skill set. You actually have the skill set of writing. It's not your talent, though. You hate doing it. Would that be fair?
Correct.
You
Correct.
know? So the difference is, just because I can do something doesn't mean that's a talent. It just means that's something I can do versus something that is my natural disposition. You probably have to try harder as well, right, to develop
Would
the
you say
skill.
like would you say it's like an energy thing? Like if it's with you can develop a skill. However, if it's also your talent, it requires less energy to do that
Yes.
thing.
Yes, I would definitely say so. Oftentimes, your talents and your skills are going to align, so you won't have a lot of skills that aren't in alignment with your talent. It does happen on occasion, but yeah, I would agree with you. It's something that brings you joy. The other thing too, like, is interesting. When you're talented at something and you feel like you're good at it, you're going to naturally enjoy doing it more than if you suck at it.
So that was going to be my next thing, which is where do you think it comes from when people have a talent they don't like? So for example, like I am talented at sales, but I actually don't love sales.
That's also a great. I think that's a great question. Also, like, so part of it is going to be different facets, and we'd have to dissect a lot of it to figure out what it is you don't like about sales, right? Sometimes it's just we're being lazy. No,
Hmm.
and I'm not saying you are, but sometimes
Yeah.
it just is. I don't like doing that much work. I'd rather, just talk. But there
I
are
think it's
definitely.
for me I think it's I don't like, which is probably for most people as well. I don't like the association. Like I don't like the
Sure.
idea that people think that I'm trying to manipulate them.
Mm,
Like I'd rather them believe what I feel like is true, which is I'm trying to point you in the right direction. Like I'm trying to coach you. So like my
yeah.
entire career in sales, even today, as I've changed, the example I gave earlier, I changed the way that I see sales so I can continue to do it. Because
Right.
there was a point where like I was a number in my old company, I was like the number one sales rep, but I fucking hated sales. Like, I just
Yeah.
didn't like the way it made me feel. So I changed. I figured out another way of doing it. So I used to say like, well, I don't sell. I coach people to their destination.
Right.
So but I'm doing the same thing,
Yeah.
right? But I had to change it in my mind so that way I could feel better about it. But also like, there's people that I know that are like, for example, that like are really really good, at like writing, let's say, but like they hate their own writing, like that kind
Yeah.
of thing too.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton that goes into it, but I love kind of what you're saying there because I think it hits on this idea that culturally there are certain talents that, and we talked about it this weekend, but I think it bears to talk about it again. There are some talents that we will actually devalue. So this is a crazy thing, Raymond. I wrote this out once that your talent actually drives your value and vice versa. When you don't honor somebody's talent, you actually devalue who they are as a person, right? And I do believe that. So let's say for men, right? If we are, and I use this example, but I'll use it again. If you are highly empathetic, right? So you have deep empathy and you show up in a way that has this kind of, touchy feely, not touchy, but very feely kind of feeling about it. What is that guy labeled as?
Soft. Yeah.
Yeah, soft. So then what we do in our culture is we teach people, well, and we assign, like, this is where it gets a little bit goofy. You have to be careful about assigning gender to value as well, right? So, well, that's not as masculine, so he can't be empathetic. Or I use the example all the time, a woman who shows up, there's this talent called command, which is presence, right? And you kind of like to be in charge. When a woman shows up that way, culturally, at least in our culture, she's labeled as, just very not desirable. She's labeled as a bitch, she's labeled as this, that. And she learns at a young age that talent isn't, that makes you less desirable as a person, right? That makes
Mm-hmm.
you unacceptable. So then we stop showing up in the most natural state of being. We devalue our talent. And then
And
we
that's where
try
you can
to,
have an imbalance in that skill. Now it's no longer a skill. It's still a talent, but it's no longer a skill anymore because you didn't value it anymore.
right. And you're avoiding it. And so then we wake up and we're like, man, why am I so unhappy all the time? Right? Why do I not feel fulfilled? Well, you've been taking your talent and kind of shoving it away. And so this is the other thing too, like this is the reason I like doing when we talk about Gallup, there's actually 34 talent themes that are there. There's no way to come up with every single talent. Do you know how much talent there is in the world, Raylan? We'd be hours, days, and months just trying to label them. So they put them in themes and they put these themes in domains. I don't even like to do the theme, like looking at one theme, because it's too, I don't think it doesn't do you justice all the time. It's just very difficult to get down and narrow it into. But so that's the reason I like using the domains, because it helps us to have a better picture, a bigger
What's the
picture.
what's the difference between a domain? So the domain was like strategic thinking, right? So then what's
Yes,
a theme?
a theme is going to be, so a domain, like I said, we're the four. A theme is going to be a little bit more specific. So let's take, I like influence because that's kind of where I exist, but we'll use command. I think you and I both had command very, very. In fact, I think we both had it number one, right?
Yeah.
And so the way when we show up with presence. Oftentimes, people are going to ask us in charge when we're not in charge, just because we have this air of confidence and, again, being in charge. And that's going to be a theme. Whereas the domain is going to be much broader than that, where they take kind of all of the results and they take your most dominant theme out of it. So again, we'll go to influence. Influence was more than command. I think we both had communication. We both had woo, which is winning others over. It's just the bigger assimilation of those themes, and they put it into the domain. It's easier to communicate, and it takes less time, really, for me. But I will use another one, for example, which is, again, relator. People who are deeply relator with the relator theme. And again, this is Anthony. I think it was number one or really close to. He deeply desires and values relationship, pretty much above everything else. So one of the things for him, and actually, I don't remember if you had relator in your top one, Raylan, at all. I don't
I
remember.
can't remember.
But for him, he like abhors doing sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he wants you to come to your own conclusions. He doesn't want to influence you into it, right?
That makes sense.
And for him, that was theme based. Whereas again, for when you and I talk, and probably some things that have been stated, it becomes in the back of our brain, right, subconsciously. How many times you've been told salespeople are terrible? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, gosh, it's terrible. I hate it when people do this and that. And because you're so strong on influence, you naturally sell people all the time. That's your natural state of being. Is in it's not sales, it's influence. It just happens to be that sales are are typically high influential people. And then the other side of it is influential people can come across very insincere and very used car salesman, right?
Yeah.
And see, there's the dark side of that talent, and that's where this comes. I naturally lean into influence. I value relationship, and because I value relationship so strongly, I actually don't like the way I show up in people's lives because I'm always trying to influence you, and it's counterproductive. I don't like my talent anymore because it feels less sincere. But the truth is, when you show up and when I show up, even in our influence, we are sincere. This is who we are and how we were designed. It's just that we learned somewhere in the process culturally, we learned that people who are influencing us are trying to manipulate us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when you shift it a little bit though and go, hold on, I'm not trying to manipulate you. I really believe that this strategy is going to help you make a difference in your life. We care deeply. Where we get in trouble as influencers is when we believe we have the right answer for somebody and we
Yeah.
don't listen to what they have to say.
Yeah,
And
well, it's so funny because again, I very much so like if I'm in a conversation and I'm not helping you look at the world a little bit differently, I feel like it's a wasted conversation.
oh, 100%.
Like if I can't, and that's why too, like I think selfishly, I love doing the podcast now, is because my role here is to not influence. It's just to learn. And
Yeah.
so it's been a fun like thing for me because I also enjoy learning too. So it's this weird like balance of like anytime I see an opportunity to change someone's mind, I have to take it. But at the same time,
Yes.
like it's also bitten me in the ass where it's like it's an going back to energy. Like there's some people that you're not gonna change their mind.
Right.
Like it's built like that's their belief of like who they are. And so it's been this fun thing of being like, okay, should I even bother doing that? Like probably not. But then it's funny because then I look back sometimes and I go, well, why did I still do that? Oh, because I just enjoy it. Like I don't even
Yeah.
care if I change your mind sometimes. It's just like I just need to try. It's fun.
Yeah. And that's another point when you talk about talent is you are multi-talented. You are more than an influencer. You
Hmm.
are really good at the strategic thinking side of things. So you are a learner. And it's actually, I love the combination of learning and influence because you realize as a thinker and as a learner, you begin to realize how important it is to have depth to your thoughts before you influence somebody.
Hmm. So
People who
then
are, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say we were gonna touch on something else, and if you're good, we could jump back to excuses and introvert.
Yeah.
Excuses and introvert.
Yeah.
We were gonna
I
talk
don't,
about it for a second.
yeah, I don't
Do you
remember
remember
what
where
it
we were gonna go?
was, but the excuses,
So
yeah,
pretty much people what they do, like especially with this just personality test in general, is they'll do this thing where they'll be like, "Well, I'm an introvert, so I can never be good at that,"
right.
or I can't be an entrepreneur because again, I'm an introvert. Like I don't like getting in front of people. I don't like doing this. And so, I mean, what do you do? And I guess what would be because my recommendation for anybody that's listening to this is gonna be even if you're a solopreneur, like you should obviously meet with Jesse, but like you need to know what your skill set is and then where your talents are or not, because then you can make a plan. Like one of the things I talk a lot about is like right when I started out as a solopreneur, I always knew I was going to have people because again,
Hmm.
like there's too many, I have way too many gaps in what I'm good at, and I don't want to spend any time on that. But also like again, I relate everything to like MMA and like jiu-jitsu, but like in MMA, for example, you have jiu-jitsu, you have wrestling, you have boxing, you have kickboxing, you have cage work. There's too many skills that you have to be decent at, and so you can spend all your time trying to get really really good at all of it, or you manage your time and go, I'm okay being only proficient here but being really really good here. So you look at like Stylebender, who interestingly enough just lost, but he lost to someone that's very like him, which is they're very good at the stand up game, but they're proficient everywhere else. versus you have someone that's like GSP, for example, that was really, really good everywhere. So it's like I think in terms of like, okay, how can I balance my time and all those things. So I guess my question would be like, if you're a solopreneur, what is the purpose of doing something like, again, what I've coined to be the skill finder with Jesse
Yeah.
Hopkins? Like, what is the purpose?
Uh, well, there's a lot of purpose. I think the thing is, you have to make a decision in your business. If you're a solopreneur, are you okay with where you're at and what you got? Right? I mean, that's the first question to ask. If you're cool and you aren't having any problems, you are happy, don't do anything. Stay with exactly what you're doing. That's fine. There's no problem with that whatsoever. Most of us, though, when you started your business, you started with a dream of doing something big, right? Or big-ish, depending on where your starting point is. So what I want to do is come down to this. Like, I was talking to, again, one of the members of the academy, and I asked him, I was like, hey, how come you haven't launched your product yet? Right? Really, really good. Sound familiar? He's really good with relationships, really good as a strategic thinker, was not very influential, and his execution was not like, it just wasn't there. And I told him, I was like, look, dude, you're really good at creating. And he's a very, very good creative person, but he's never going to launch his product if he doesn't figure out how to delegate. So let me explain this a little bit. I am really good at talking to people. Let me talk to people. I love it. Let me talk about deep philosophical thoughts. You and I will talk all day. I love it. We'll probably really enjoy each other. I am not really good at marketing, Raylan. I'm just not. And it's not that I don't love it. I get the idea. I understand it. I'm a deep thinker. I understand how marketing works. I understand how it works. But when it comes to executing it, if I want to really get my product out there, I need to find a strategic partner to do it for me. It's just the end of the day. I need to find somebody who will get it done. So, an excuse, I'm not good at execution, right? I'm just not. When it comes to executing things, I can get things done. That's not the first skill set I learn into. You know what I can do to offset it though? I can find somebody to do it for me. That's how an influencer gets something done. And I use this all the time when I was doing some leadership development with people. Just because I'm not good at execution doesn't mean I can't get a task done. It's just how I'm going to get it done is what's impacted. So if you're struggling in an area as a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, you have to, first of all, be really honest with where you're at. What is it that you want? And if you're saying, I know I need to do this, I just can't figure out why I'm not doing it, that's where this skill set or this talent finder, this strengths finder with the talent can help you begin to identify what talent do you have, how do you show up in the situation, and who do you like, what kind of person should you partner with? So again, for this guy I was talking to, we talked about, the different people who were really good at execution that was in the room with us. And I don't know if he'll execute on it or not. I hope he does, because it'll make a difference. But for you and I, we're really good at influence, really good at strategic thinking. We may not always be good at making people feel cared for, right? Now, again, the way we do it, we can make people feel cared for. The way we're going to do it is a little bit different, but finding strategic partners to bring that together for us is extremely important in the way we get things done. So again, the talent never says you can't get it done. It's just the way you get it done is going to be a little bit different. And you have to think outside the box.
You said something during a presentation this weekend that was interesting to me, because I've heard before, like, oh, you don't care about like X, Y, and Z. And then again, it was the realization, like, oh, like, because like, for example, right, like when we talk about like your marketing, for example, well, we're going to take over like your marketing and start doing it. And I may not call you every day, and I will just tell the team, hey, execute, do whatever. But I'm doing all that because I care. Like, I really want your message out there, because I think it could really like impact people. And so, but that's my version of caring. Whereas like for other people, it's like, they need me to call them 18 times a day to say like, what's up. And it's like, that's not how I operate.
Yeah, and you shouldn't operate that way. To be absolutely clear, how many times I call you in a day doesn't determine how much I care about you,
No.
right? So, I mean, process again from talent. How much talent impacts the way you think? For you and I cannot talk to you for a month, and then we get on the phone, and it's going to feel like, you're my best friend. Like,
Yeah.
because again, that relationship talent for me is not real deep. Somebody who has a deep relationship talent, they need to be honest about their own strengths, not other people's. I know if I'm deep relationship, I need to reach out and have deep relationship. I'm responsible for my own talent. Sorry, you get me in a little, I'm going to get fired up on this one, Raylan. It is not okay for me to take my talent and say, you need to be good at it. That's a bunch of bull crap, right? So the idea, when I understand my talent and how it shows up, maybe there are things that are bothering you with your personal relationships, and it has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with you understanding how your own internal mechanisms work, and that's your talent. So again, to label somebody who is a high influencer and say, well, you're callous and you just don't care. No, the fact that you showed up and you're trying to influence speaks to how much you value the people around you, because that's how you do relationships. Now, the next question that comes from this, from a leadership standpoint, shouldn't I be aware of the talents around me? And if I'm going to communicate, I care about other people, shouldn't I communicate in a language that resonates with them?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, I should. I need to, again, my wife is high execution. And I understand that to help her understand I value her, I need to wash the dishes, cook dinner on
Mm-hmm.
occasion. You know what I mean? Like, that's going to make her feel valued because I'm speaking. It's a love language as well, but it's also, I'm speaking in her talent language.
Yeah.
Um, but am I going to naturally do that all the time? No, I'm not, nor should I have to. But I am going to consciously do it on occasion because I care. Now,
Yeah.
again, relationships, and sorry, I want to wrap this topic up, but we could keep talking about it if you want. But from a relationship standpoint, Raylan, it comes from both of us. If I'm in a relationship with you, both of us understanding our talents, and this is where your team comes in. Let me understand your talent, what benefits you, how you're going to feel valued. And then I can consciously kind of do that. But you also have to understand that's not a natural disposition for me, and really fill in the blanks yourself. Does that make sense? Where it's a kind of a mutual understanding.
Yeah, and it's such a fascinating thing because I think again back to like me and Kayla and stuff, and anytime we've ever gotten an argument, it's usually because like, well, all you had, like, why didn't you put this away? Why didn't you put this in the hamper? Why didn't you? And it's funny because it wasn't until recently that I realized like, oh, that's how. And we talked about it once, and I was like, I show you I care by telling you I love you, by giving
Right.
you hugs and doing, and then for her, she's like, I just wanted you to do this, and then that would
Mm-hmm.
show me, and then it's like, oh, okay, we're speaking two different languages, and that's why. And so
Yeah.
like it's that mutual thing of going, all right, well, basically, do me a favor and accept this form of currency, and then sometimes I'll give you this form of currency. Like it's like you both have to be cool with like exchanging in different ways. But that's why again that the skill finder, talent finder, whatever we decide to call it,
Yeah.
is interesting to me because there's like it's not just about your career. It's not just about like your entrepreneur journey. It's really just about like how can you make your life a little bit easier if you stay into your like talent and leveraging. And it's like for me it's like I want to create a business that I don't have to work as hard to do. And by that I mean like there's this thing, and I always tell people now, which is like everyone used to say like, oh, grind, I'm gonna grind. And I always say like, but the problem with the idea of grinding is that it involves friction. That
Yeah.
means that you are forcing something when in fact it doesn't have to be grinding. It is perfectly possible to still grow a very significant business and also impact a lot of lives without the friction and without the grinding. Doesn't mean you don't work as hard, right? Like it just means that there's a more efficient way of doing it, which is where you come into play, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think I love the idea of like your program helping people go, all right, what's your vision? Okay, now what's your talent? And then what do we got to do to make this a reality? Because
Right.
there's some people again that I know look at this and maybe think to themselves like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know, but it's also like Yeah, you can do it, but maybe we do need to hire somebody, right? Or maybe we need to
Right.
bring somebody in. Like, if I were to do it all over again, I think I would have my first kind of employee would have been like an executive assistant. That
Yeah.
probably would have been like number one, and
Yeah.
then slowly build everything else up, and then maybe a writer. But like it's like that's but basically that's what I did. I just went like minus the executive assistant, but like basically what I did was like, okay, what do I hate doing? I hate writing. All right, let's get someone that can write for me. All right, what do I hate doing? Well, I hate editing content. Okay, well let's get somebody to do that. Right. Anyway, any final notes before we jump off, dude? I think this has been fun.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you bringing me on and allowing me to talk a little bit about it. I love talking to you and hanging out with you, so it's
Yeah.
always fun. I think it's just the biggest thing about talent, entrepreneur, solopreneurship is really learning who you are and how you show up in life. And that's easy. There's a lot of people who are going to tell you how you show up, right? There's a lot of assessments out there and everything else. The hard work becomes accepting it.
Hmm.
It's probably the hardest thing is accepting I'm good at some things, I'm not good at others. I'm aware enough, not just self-aware, but I can accept who I am and I'm okay with that. When we can hit that point, then these conversations become much easier and you don't have as much resistance against it. The problem for most of us isn't that we don't know what we're good at, it's that we're not willing to accept it because we feel like we have to be good at everything. So, when I'm working with people, I would say, Raina, I was actually coaching somebody earlier today, and part of the work that we were doing was telling her she's okay. You know what I'm saying? Like who she
Yeah.
is, she's this beautiful, sounds like I'm talking about like a love story. She has this beautiful talent and shows up beautifully in the world. She brings this beauty to the world when she does what she's good at. But she keeps trying to fix her business in ways that isn't reflection of who she is. So the more
Mhm.
she tries to do it, the less beauty is in the world because she doesn't know how to show up and accept the beauty that is in her. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And again, I also love that you talk about like the negative side of that talent. Like recently, we made this decision to like for our agency to just focus on a handful of people that can impact the most amount of lives. But it's difficult to do because I'm an influencer, and so I thought that I had to do. So I went big up front. Let's get as many clients as we can. But I wasn't happy. And then I realized, I'm like, oh, but because I'm spread so thin, we're not making the massive impact that I
Yeah.
want to make. So okay, let's cut it down and then really dive in so they can influence a million people this year. And then through doing that, I'll actually influence more people. So it's like it's one of those things that I think is it's one of those keys that I think is imperative to not only just businesses but also for our own happiness and our own enjoyment. Because look, at the end of the day, if you're not doing what you love doing, what the fuck are you doing? Like
Right.
one thing that grinds my gears honestly is I get in these fights a lot with people and they're like they'll say like you don't have to love what you're doing. You shouldn't. You should grind. You should do this. And it's always funny to me because those people, same people that are doing that, they're doing something that they enjoy.
Right.
But like that doesn't mean that you are gonna enjoy that. Like,
Right.
it's like one of those things. But you can live in a business like so. For example, the agency. So we do a lot of marketing stuff. I don't like doing landing pages. I don't like editing content, but I love influencing. So I can still have an agency though, because I just find people to do those things, right?
A hundred
Um,
percent.
yeah, I don't know what the hell just happened with the other one. All right, so we'll cut it. We'll cut it here, Jesse. I appreciate you, man. I'll put in all the links and stuff so people can find you and reach you.
I
But
appreciate it.
this was fun, man. I appreciate you,
Yeah, man.
man.